Right, this is the 49er boat breaker. It just clips onto the forestay and you just pull her on. And this system, it's got a little 6-to-1, so it's quite easy to pull on. And just guide the thing in. I'm on target there. There we go. And then you can literally just free it off, take her off and she's clear. Split pin on, and all is well. And on this, we also just tie the jib cunningham just through here, but we've drilled out the hole and made it really smooth so the string doesn't fray. And then we secure the jib cunningham just through this hole. And on these new Neil Pride sails, which everyone uses now, we always secure it just in line with the ferrule, top of the ferrule. It's a good base point to work from. And just tie her off there. And then you're in the middle clue hole on the jib. And you can't really go wrong, to be honest.
It's important to get the rig settings in the right ballpark, and your class association will help with some basic numbers. Here we've used a spring gauge to measure cap and shroud tension. Consistency is important, so always measure from shoulder height. It's a good idea to take the forestay tension to complete the picture. This is also a good indicator for the amount of forestay sag you can expect. Lower bend can be measured by taking the jib halyard from the bottom spreader down the front of the mast so it touches a point of maximum bend. Place a ruler at gooseneck height, then record the distance between the back of the halyard and the front of the mast. To know the basics of how the rig works, we don't need to be in Spain, it's a walk in the park. Harnessing the power of the rig is about minimising twist, and the fully buttoned mainsail with roach can be held almost twist-free with the right amount of leash tension. First of all, let's have a look at the effect of the main sheet. This gives us the leash tension we're after, but without affecting the overall shape of the mainsail. As we can see, as I pull the main sheet on, we're tensioning the leach of the main, but the shape itself isn't affected. Our second option is the kicking strap, but this has another effect of bending the mast. As I pull kicker on, not only am I getting the leach tension I desire, but I'm also flattening the main. So we've got two options to use, each giving us the leach tension we're after. The skill comes from knowing which control to use and when. Having mentioned that harnessing power was about controlling twist, we're going to use the main sheet as our primary control. This comes on all the time we're searching for more power, but as soon as we're overpowered and we have to ease the main to keep the boat balanced, we're going to have to get our leach tension from another control, and that's where the kicker comes in. So to get a better appreciation of what the kicker does, as I pull the tension on, we can see the boom being forced into the bottom section of the mast, flattening off the middle of the main. From a different angle, we can see the sail changing shape and getting flatter as I put more kicker on. Our best indication for this is some starvation creases appearing from the bottom spreader. The 29er demonstrates this brilliantly, because without lowers, too much kicker overbends the mast, giving us the diagonal creases we see here. Easing the kicker straightens the mast and the sail becomes deeper. The Cunningham's one of the most misunderstood sail controls. The common perception is that it just pulls the fullness out of the front of the sail, but in reality it's putting compression on the mast, bending the tip and then opening up the leach of the sail. As I pull tension on, we can see the mast bending aft and the sail opening up. This gives us the twist that we're after to depower the mainsail. As I let the tension off, the tip of the mast straightens and the leach returns back up again, giving us power and height on the racecourse. This highlights how important it is to have the Cunningham off when we're trying to power up. Our final sail control is the outhaul. This looks after the depth and the bottom third of the mainsail. It's a great way of getting rid of the starvation creases we saw earlier caused by over-kickering. Just through easing the outhaul an inch, it's often enough to drop out those creases. And also, by putting more depth in the bottom of the sail, we can give more return into the bottom third of the leach. The leach of the jib is just as important as on the mainsail, and our key controls here are the clew board position and the sheet tension. The clew board will control how much you pull on the leach of the jib with any given sheet tension. The higher up you go, the harder the leach, the lower, the more twisted. Having changed the top hole, we can see the sheeting angle changes so that now we're pulling down more on the leech. The actual point has also moved forward, so we've induced more depth into the sail as well. If we were to switch to the bottom clew hole, this would have a similar effect, although the jib would then be flatter and more twisted. Another way of adjusting sheeting angle is with the jib tack height. Moving up on the jib tack is the same as moving up on the clew board, but it's a much more precise and accurate way of making the adjustment. Another important sail control is the jib track position. This allows you to sheet the jib more outboard without affecting the leech profile. In general terms, the windier it gets, the further out you're going to have to sheet the jib. This is to take into account the fact that the main's going to be off the centre line. Our final sail control is the jib halyard. This is pretty much self-adjusting, so it's pretty easy to set up. The more breeze you have, the more tension you're going to have to pull on to pull the scallops out of the sail. So, windier it is, the more tension you pull on, lighter it is, the less you'll need. You might find in light winds you want to sail with a bit of sag, just to make it easier to helm to. Upwind speed's about three things: boat balance, fore and aft trim and sail trim. Flat is fast, and the more precise you can be in terms of heel, the better the boat will feel. Here the 800 is being sailed perfectly upright, using a combination of accurate steering and main sheet trim. As the gust hits, the helm luffs and eases the main, but working the two together reduces the amount of sheet and rudder required. The close-up gives us a better idea of what's going on. Uncleating the main before the gust is another good tip. From side on, we can see helm and crew have moved back to a mid-rack position. When planing, the aim is to get the boat through the swell, with the knuckle of the bow just kissing the water. This position is by no means fixed, and moving backwards and forwards for changes in sea state will help optimise boat speed. Feel is again the best indicator, and subtle changes in trim can make a noticeable difference to pitching. This is helped by keeping crew weight together, which also reduces windage. In light winds, the focus shifts to waterline length, and this is maximised by getting forward on the rack, digging the bow in, and tricking the water into thinking the boat is longer than it actually is. Balance remains important, and with a little bit of leeward heel, the feel on the rudder's improved. It also gives us a touch of weather helm, which is just what we're looking for in these conditions. The distance between the leeward wing and the water, shown by the arrow, is a great indicator for boat balance. It's important that helm and crew continually talk about whether the boat is flat, and it's better for both to react together to a gust or lull, rather than separately. There's a time and a place for windward heel, and this is definitely not it. With the rig over on top of the guys, it gives them little time to react to a lull. It also means the bow's constantly being pulled away, and when you're trying to search for height in these conditions, that's not a good thing. Right then, the breeze is back on, and we've got some short chop to deal with. Firstly, trim the knuckle of the bow so it just kisses the average wave, moving way aft for the larger waves to stop green water going into the chute. From astern, we get a better idea of the amount of steering the helm is using for this wavelength. Watch the tiller being moved in a sharp, stabbing movement, luffing the bow up the face of the wave and then pulling it away as it reaches a crest. It's important to trim the main to keep the boat absolutely flat, but the further the main moves off the centre line, the more powered up the jib becomes, moving the centre of effort forward and making it harder for the helm to stab up in the gusts. It's for this reason that somebody needs to have the jib sheet in their hand in gusty conditions. Here Alistair picks up the jib and flicks the sheet off, but you'd be amazed just how little you have to ease to have the desired effect. At spreader height, we can see just how much the jib blade's open. Ideally, we only need to be easing an inch outside the spreader in the gusts. With Alistair and Peter working the sheets together, the boat remains in balance. Nice job, guys.
Right, we're on the 29er here, just on the jib sheet system. And as standard, it comes up with this 3-to-1 system. Ties off on the becket there, goes up through this pulley here, and goes through this pulley here and back to the cleats. Unfortunately, this is asymmetric. I'll just give a quick example. But if I tape off a little mark on the jib sheet here, right, we can see that mark there on this side. As I move it across, that mark's now been sucked into that block, so it's tensioned the jib sheet probably, well, best part of an inch and a bit, which is obviously no good, because obviously it means you spend your whole time adjusting the jib sheet. So what we recommend is you remove this system here, reduce this purchase, and just secure the jib sheet to the point up here. You can actually take this block off if you want and just tie it off to the fitting there. And this will then subsequently get my black mark out. Then when we go from side to side, there's the black mark. Then all the way across, exactly the same. So it's symmetrical. So that's the best thing to do on the jib sheet system.
Further up the course, we can see the sea state has flattened off. All too often we see helms using the rudder just for the sake of it, but remember, it's basically a handbrake, so keep movements precise and to a minimum. With the main cranked in on the centreline, it's important to adjust your weight to keep the boat flat. Peter's constantly playing his adjuster, making the most of his weight for the conditions, bringing himself up in the lulls and dropping down to the knots in the gust. You should always look to get yourself as low as possible on the wire to make the most of your leverage. Once flat wiring, you can think about depowering, but never before. Always looking to power up and get the maximum out of the rig until your weights drop to the knots.
Right, this is my trapeze setup. I have a standard adjuster rope, which is obviously the 2-to-1. Always set up a little handle, 2 little stopper knots. The rope's 5mm and it's 1.6 meters long. And then I have an adjustable splice, which is actually at the moment set right off to near its max let off. And then so for light winds, I can pull myself up and have a slightly high wiring system. This basically avoids having a massive trapeze adjuster rope, which obviously can create tangles, can get involved in the spinnaker sheet, and it just keeps it neat and tidy. And it also means in the real light stuff you can really high wire, and then vice versa. When it's really windy, I can adjust myself right down, like right down to the maximum there, and I can really get the trapeze loop good and low.
Once maxed out, it's back to playing the main sheet to maintain the correct trim. Check out how little main is eased once in sync with the tiller movements, and our best gauge for this is the distance between the main sheet blocks on the back of the boom. If they're not together, then we're going to be searching for more power, and in that case you need to swing off the main.
Initially, when we first started sailing the 49er, we used to have adjustable strops, but recently what we've been doing to get the main on the centre line is we've been having a split main sheet system, which basically, instead of attaching to the block here, it now splits out of this last block and then separates and attaches to the ends of the wings where the old existing main sheet strops used to be.
Once the main's off the centre line, it's back on the vang, and this sequence shows its effect on the mast-sail relationship. The starvation creases shown here are a graphic demonstration of how much flatter the sail becomes. As the kickers ease, you can see the fullness going back into the bottom third of the sail, dropping those starvation creases out. However, from astern, we can see the mainsail now has masses of twist, which means lots of drag and no height on the racecourse. Bringing the vang back on again, and we get the kind of leach profile we're looking for. But the lessons learned are when powering up, we should look to use the main sheet, only bringing the vang on when we become overpowered.